Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a town rich with history. This is the story of Saracen. Saracen, or Chief Saracen as he is also commonly referred, is a famous citizen of the Quapaw Nation. Details about Saracen vary considerably depending on the source. However, all sources agree that he was a major, larger-than-life figure in early Arkansas history. A soldier and interpreter stationed at Arkansas Post named Francois Saracen has generally been considered to be Saracen's father. Records do not indicate what his Quapaw mother's name was. Francois Saracen married a French woman named Marie Lapine in 1752. The French couple apparently did not have any children. Francois Saracen died in 1763. Saracen's life was filled with many colorful and exciting adventures. The most well-known is the story about his rescue of 2 white children. There are 3 versions of the occurrence. The version that is most often repeated is that a raiding party of Chickasaw Indians abducted the 2 white children near Pine Bluff. When the news reached Saracen, he went to the weeping mother and promised that he would return the children to her or he would himself never return. Saracen rode down the river the night of the abduction and located a Chickasaw camp near Arkansas Post. Alone and unaided, Saracen lifted his tomahawk and gave the Quapaw war cry. Chickasaw fled and left the abducted children behind. The Arkansas Democrat newspaper even published this version on August 4, 1899. A second story depicts an encounter where a combined group of British Tories and Chickasaw, led by James Colbert, attacked Arkansas Port. The attackers kidnapped a number of residents, which included women, children, and 3 black slaves. A counterattack of Spanish soldiers from Quapaw allowed for the escape of most of the hostages. A Spanish commandant later wrote of a brave Quapaw who threw a tomahawk and then confronted Colbert. Colbert then surrendered his captives and was allowed to leave. The brave Quapaw was thought to have been Saracen. A letter between George Izard and William Keating of the American Philosophical Society dated January 10, 1827, describes the way Saracen himself recounted in the presence of assembled chiefs. When he was a youth, the port of Arkansas was prized by the Chickasaws. The Spanish commandant named Viller and his 2 infant daughters were carried off by the assailants. Saracen casually visited the port a few hours after this event and found Madame Viller in the deepest distress at the loss of her husband and children. Moved by her tears, he determined to attempt the rescue of the prisoners and immediately followed the trace of the Chickasaws. After a pursuit of several miles, he overtook 2 of the latter, who were reprising under a tree, and to his joy and surprise beheld the 2 babes lying on the ground near them. He sprang forward without uttering a word, seized and threw the 2 latter over his shoulders and retraced his steps to the port, unmolested by the Chickasaw, who were either too fatigued or astonished to intercept him. As he approached the little Spanish fort, the mother flew to meet him, but within a few steps shrieked with agony at seeing one of her infants as she thought dead on its rescuer's shoulder. The child had fallen asleep, and his little head nodded with every step of the warrior. She was soon relieved from her fears thanks to her benefactor. Viller, the father, was yet to be restored to the family. Saracen undertook to bring him back or perish. "If I am killed," he said, "there will be 1 dog less on the earth." but if I succeed, a whole family will be made happy. A brother of the commandant gave him a sack of dollars as ransom for his relation. With this, he set out and made his way toward the Chickasaws, who were encamped at some distance above the mouth of a White River on the Mississippi. Saracen then called upon his uncle. The latter, when he learned about the destination, declared that the project was impractical unless the demand for the captives was supported by a force from their tribe. All of the latter who were in the neighborhood were immediately assembled. They approached the Chickasaw camp, and after some negotiation, Viller was returned to his liberty and his family. The notoriety that Saracen received by his rescue of the children prompted the first territorial governor, James Miller, to award him a presidential medal. The presidential medal symbolized American recognition of his leadership and elevated him to a position of chief. Saracen's position of chief permitted him to wear medals and assist at councils. However, these honors were personal and did not pass to his eldest son, as was the case with other chiefs whose blood was purely Indian. Saracen did other noteworthy deeds as a leader during his lifetime. He was one of the signers of the Treaty of 1833 that ceded Quapaw land. He also led many of his people back to the Pine Bluff area after the disastrous experience of evacuation. Saracen's name and legacy lives on in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Several local spots currently bear his name. They include Saracen Street, Saracen Landing, a downtown mural, and the Saracen Casino. Saracen died sometime between 1833 and 1839. The exact date is not known. Saracen was originally buried in Pine Bluff's Old Town Cemetery. His remains were moved to Bellwood Cemetery in 1883 and finally to St. Joseph's Cemetery in 1905. Saracen's grave marker reads 1832. However, Saracen was a signer on the Treaty of 1833, which proves the inaccuracy of the marker.